Is this recording? Yes, it is. Hey everybody, John the Other here, obviously. And I'm going to read you some segments of an article that was published on August 16, 2019 in a paper called the Toronto Star, which many people call the Toronto Red Star because it's a very left-leaning and some might even say communist-leaning newspaper. But this is just straight reporting on a new funding policy from the Trudeau government. So regardless that we don't like that newspaper, this is the news, so here it is. The title is, Ottawa Kickstarts Push to Bring Men and Boys into Fight for Gender Equality. Now, that's just the title, and I'm already going to stop and pause. The term gender equality is a code phrase. I recently learned this because there's a feminist propaganda campaign called Equality Can't Wait, where they talk extensively about gender equality, and when you go to their website and you follow the links, it takes you to the World Economic Forum website, who is the actual group funding and producing this propaganda campaign. And when you read what they are saying on the World Economic Forum website about so-called gender equality, what they call it there is accelerating gender parity in globalization 4.0. So gender equality should be read as globalization 4.0. Now, you think I'm making this up. I'm going to put the links to the articles in the low bar so you know that this isn't just me going all Alex Jones on your butt. And if you think globalization 4.0 sounds dystopian and Orwellian and sinister, well, that's because it is. Anyway, Ottawa Kickstarts push to bring men and boys into fight for gender equality, or as they like to call it, globalization 4.0. Trumpeting the need for men and boys to enlist in the fight for gender equality, the federal government, that's Trudeau's government in Canada, is awarding $562,000 to 4 organizations in a bid to lay the foundations for its promised national strategy. Now, its promised national strategy, Payne, I'm fairly sure that at no point did he say he was going to begin public re-education, public-funded re-education of men to take away their male identity and substitute in a politically correct or a feminist-supplied template for male identity. I'm relatively sure that that was not in the details, but it appears to be in the plan. Women and Gender Equality Minister Mariam Moussef is set to announce the funding Friday in Calgary, where she will also hail the release of a report prepared by her department to summarize months of cross-country consultations about how men and boys can, quote, unlearn what the government deems outdated gender stereotypes that harm everyone. Now, regardless of whether you are a feminist or you are an equalist or you're a humanitarian or you're a radical, hate-mongering, right-wing MRA, you might find it a little sinister that the government, any government, gets to step in and take control of a fundamental biological component of the identity of the citizens of a country. The government is going to teach people to unlearn what the government deems outdated gender stereotypes that harm everybody. Now, this isn't like an academic group or a mental health specializing group. This is a highly ideological government under the boy emperor Trudeau. The report calls for programs that use role models to encourage men and boys to support gender equality. Remember, gender equality is a code phrase for globalization 4.0. I'm not making this up. I know it sounds loopy. It sounds like Alex Jones' goofy talk, conspiracy theory. Apparently, feminists are now secure enough in their power that they're publishing documents where they actually reveal that what they're pushing for when they say gender equality is globalization 4.0. I mean, here it is on the World Economic Forum website, the organization that is creating the program called Equality Can't Wait that I talked about in my last video. The article continues. The report calls for programs that use role models to encourage men and boys to support gender equality, champion private companies that support these ideas, and create safe spaces. There's nothing more toxic than a safe space. In places like schools, where men and boys can discuss healthy masculinity and ideas about what it means to be a man. Now, if that was legitimate, you'd have men's groups doing it. In fact, men's groups do it, except that when they do it in anything other than a feminist tenor, they get attacked and shrieked at. They get called misogynist and Nazi and all kinds of other horrible nonsense. Feminists, though, they can come in and decide what masculinity means. Nobody thinks that's absurd. Nobody thinks that's obscene. Okay. Groups receiving money include the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters. What a great group or organization to define what masculinity is. A group of women's shelters, which will get $212,000 to promote sports figures as gender equality role models. Catalyst Canada, I don't know who they are. They'll receive $100,000 for programs designed to encourage men to interrupt sexism in the workplace. Oh, that sounds like a great idea. And a group called Foxy will get $125,000 for programs aimed at Indigenous youth in the Northwest Territories. Finally, Next Gen Men, an organization designed to promote, quote, positive masculinity, end quote, will get $125,000 to build networks of pro-feminist male leaders to engage with feminist and women's groups on gender equality. So yes, this is political indoctrination to erase male identity and substitute in a feminist template of what a good man is. Remember, globalization 4.0. One tier of government overall, ruling all, meaning no local representation, at least none that deviates from this top tier, top down, super controlling philosophy. Totalitarian feminism encompassing the entire world, a worldwide feminist government. I mean, Orwell wasn't even as frightening as that. It creates happier, healthy relationships, less stress, stronger families, more productive and more profitable workplaces. This is so ridiculous. And ultimately a stronger and more resilient Canada. No. No. Monsef said in a written statement on the Star on Thursday, these projects are laying the foundation for the work we will continue to do together. These people want to take half the population and erase a fundamental component of their identity. A more harmful and totalitarian and, frankly, sinister ambition I can't imagine. And never mind that we're going to replace your identity with a feminist template. Let's just imagine it's the Conservative Party doing this with some conservative ideal of what a proper man is. In what world do you think it's appropriate and not grotesque and foul and sinister for a government to step in, for a government to decide what your fundamental biological identity is? It's actually jaw-dropping. Since it took power in 2015, the Liberal government has championed gender equality, remember that's a code phrase for globalization 4.0, in Canada and abroad. In last year's budget, Ottawa earmarked $1.8 million to develop a strategy to engage men and boys in its promotion of gender equality, globalization. That money was used to fund consultations with more than 200 groups and individuals, including private companies, universities, labor groups, community organizations, and Indigenous peoples in different parts of the country. Framing the report as a guide for an upcoming national strategy, the government says it heard there is a need to raise awareness about elements of masculine behavior that contribute to gender inequality and start unlearning them. So this is political re-education, not of your political views, but of your basic fundamental identity. A more sinister and far-reaching harm to the most number of people, doing the most harm that it could possibly do, I can't imagine. So I think it's reasonable now to begin looking at a number of very popular items of feminist rhetoric, like toxic masculinity, man-spreading, mansplaining, all of these new coined terms that are designed to pathologize, to shame and attack and belittle and to dehumanize men. Anybody in your life who uses any of this terminology, I think it's now correct to not try to bother explaining to them that they're engaging in, tremendous, disgusting, horrible, hateful bigotry. Simply realize that they want to do you a grave, deep, and long-lasting harm, and remove them from your life, remove them from your circle of friends, remove them from your company if you can. This is now overtly Orwellian and deeply sinister. And it's our smiling, pretty-faced feminist prime minister pushing this particular program. I wish I could just stand here and get outraged and this was just some wild, lunatic fringe idea from a marginal group. But no, this is the federal government of Canada who wants to re-educate you about your fundamental identity as a man. And there's nothing I could say to encompass how absurd, far-reaching, overreaching, and grotesque this is. Anyway, thanks very much for listening. And as always, have a lovely, lovely day.